declare Delicus II to be here and forevermore, free of all obligation to the Thrassi Republic. We cast off your chains and shackles, and we will never accept their burden again.
Is it much like you remember it?
No. It's all so different. It's all so different.
Well, in a lot of ways, the Starship Adamant was the end of an era, or one thought. It was only 6 months after she launched that the very reason for her existence was called into question after the Trist Empire fell. I think, in a lot of ways, most people thought that the end of the Palatine project would have happened right after the fall of the Empire. Republic was hemorrhaging money, supporting these 19 starships. One of them had been so quickly destroyed. At the end of the war with the Empire, the only one lost, but it was lost so dramatically that it seemed like the Palatine project was going to end, and in a lot of ways it did. Most of the ships ended up in mothballs, and only 5 really remained in active service after 20 years. The Adamant was one of them. But there's something about that starship that left an indelible mark. The other Palatine-class starships that remained left their own legacies, but Adamant left something different. Adamant left something unique. And I don't think it should be forgotten what that ship did, what those people did on that ship. I am personally alive today, I know. And probably literally billions of other Thras are alive because of one starship, one crew, headed by Captain Thomas Lastra, whose navigator was Tesla Madrad, who was the sole surviving officer of that crew, still alive. She's now 85 years old. Quite remarkable, wasn't it?
My name is Tesla Madrad. I am 85 years old. I was born on Delicus during the height of the Trist Cold War. Delicus is a farming world, and at the time, we were on the border of the Trist Empire. We didn't really give much thought of it at the time. Things were more along the lines of just daily survival and meeting our quota and keeping the farm alive. I was an only child to my father and mother. Mother wanted me to carry on the traditions of femininity and maintain the household while my father worked in the fields. They had been hoping for a son, but after several miscarriages, they couldn't have one. My mother was an excellent homemaker and always kept the place so perfect. I felt a little intimidated, to be honest. It never really interested me anyway. I was not traditional by any stretch of the imagination. And I decided to join my father in the fields where the men worked. And it was interesting to me how fond he became of the fact that I was assisting him, mostly because he didn't have anybody else to help, and I could hold my own against the boys. I discovered I loved flying, piloting. The airspeeders that we used to crop dust was headed by a formidable woman named Asha Grisham, and she was quite a woman. She took me under her wing and taught me everything she knew about flight. So by the time I was 13, I was already flying the speeders. I never wanted to stay on Delicus. So at the first opportunity, when I turned 17, I joined the Thrassi Navy Academy, or at least applied to. We were too poor to be able to pay for it. So I applied for scholarship and got it based solely on my piloting skills. The Thrassi Republic at the time was facing heightened tension along the border with the Trist. And as a result, they were looking for pilots. So I got in. I adore spaceflight. I found it fascinating. Before, I had only done atmospheric flight. The first time I'd left Delicus, I was 17. I never knew spaceflight until that time. When I arrived at the academy on Thrassia, it was intimidating. The other students recognized my backwards accent right away, and they looked down on me. But boy, I squashed them in every competition, you better believe it. I was good. I was really good. I graduated top class and went to piloting. They took me out of the fighter pilot program pretty early on, and I was now driving Viminal attack ships, which are much bigger. I didn't like it as much. I rebelled regularly against authority. I didn't fit in very well. I was backwards with my accent. And then one day I was approached by this upstart Lieutenant Lastra. And he said he was trying to put together a team. He couldn't tell me what he was trying to do, only that if I agreed and signed a non-disclosure agreement and took a vow of silence, I would receive an opportunity of a lifetime. I thought of an elite fighter squad team or something like that. So I agreed and I signed it and arrived on the fleet planet and discovered I was going to be in the running for piloting a Palatine-class starship, the biggest thing they ever made. the worst nightmare for a fighter pilot. The thing is monstrously huge and is so badly underpowered with its engines. You can't drive it at full speed. The wings will rip off the sides of the thing. Wingspan is larger than the largest landmass on Thrassia, because we're the water world. We have one island that we all cram onto. What a nightmare. I looked at him with such hatred. But I studied up on it. And lo and behold, I didn't think we were going to get it. There was another team in the running for what was going to be the 19th of the Palatine-class starships. I was 32. 32? I think I was 32. What? No, I was 28. I was a year older than Lastra. And lo and behold, we got it. Wouldn't you believe it? We became the most ridiculous crew ever. We're a bunch of misfits. We couldn't possibly make it. Lastra was young. He's younger than all of us, except for Ensign Latus. Why did we take the place by storm? And the other Palatine captains hated us. The crews looked down on us so much. We were the most loathsome pariahs in the fleet. How dare we get the most prestigious assignment? There was only one Palatine-class cruiser left to be made, and the chances of getting onto it was slim. And here we are. Commodore Darius put us on board. Then you better believe we made a splash. What a show. What a show we made.
We were all young, but we were never naive. We launched with the full expectation that we would eventually be at war with the Tryst. That is what everyone all figured would happen back then. But the Fates had a different idea. The Tryst Empire fell within months of our launch. We were left wondering what the future would hold for us. We went from being a warship ready for combat against a superior foe to facing our own people. Uprising after uprising, planet after planet. We could not imagine what we would see.
Well, of course, there was some debate about whether or not Captain Lastra and his crew should have maybe supported the uprising on T-5 or something like that, or Delicus.
Delicus? My home planet. It's a farming world, and it was the second to fall, after Tilas. I left my parents behind to go out into space. At the time, it was an easy decision. I didn't want to be part of that world. They lived in the past. They were their eyes were always looking backward. But it was a bolder world with the Tryst Empire, and the Tryst Empire needed food. They weren't going to do anything so crass as an invasion, but they did fund insurrections along the border world when they saw that that was the future of the Republic. So we were sent to put down the uprising to my home planet. The news had sanitized the scope of the destruction. media was uncomfortable with showing things that would diminish the Thrassi Republic's reputation. And so, when we arrived, I discovered that my mother had died in a bombing 2 days before we arrived. And my father about 5 to 10 days, and it's unclear, before that. Years later, when they talk about insurrections and the fall of the Republic, it's also sanitized. It's also sanitized. They ignore the toll on individuals. You just hear numbers. 10,000 here, 30,000 there. Those were people. And for all their flaws, they can still be. My parents were people.
People love to debate 50 years later as to whether or not these men and women actually did what they were supposed to. But when you really come down to it, I think it was best summed up in something that has been attributed to Thomas Lostra, in which he said that just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you have the authority to do it or the responsibility to do it, and that it's not necessarily moral. The legal thing to do is not always the right thing to do, and the right thing to do is not always legal. But I think, in the end, Captain Wastra made the right decision by not supporting his uncle in the uprising at T-5. I think at the time, ad actum solducum was a reprehensible law, and I know that Thomas Lostra hated it. But he still supported his role as captain to enforce the law. He wasn't the arbiter of law, and he knew it.